and make it double.
It's Charlie Merriman, merry by name, merry by nature.
And Ben Kiriakou, cuckoo by name and cuckoo by nature.
And we'd just like to emphasise that we are in fact in trainers. Hello and welcome, good morning, to our second of the double Belgian MSSs. And Ben, yesterday.
Yesterday. Absolutely. Yeah, if you were along for the ride with us yesterday, you'll know exactly why we're pausing for breath at this point so early in the show here, because yesterday was just simply an incredible display of underutilized Pokemon that we got to feature. And I don't know, Charlie, do you want to take the old old Venusaur?
I'll take the Venusaur. There's plenty to talk about. I mean, you say underutilized. There's underutilized and there's zero utilized. Right?
Yeah.
Terra Rock Venusaur.
Yeah.
Weather Ball. Once the Tyranitar sets up the stand, it was so cool. Took out a Terra Fire Roaring Moon in one shot. Same team had a Torkoal on it so that you can get the Chlorophyll speed boost. Had a Latios on it. My goodness, we were on cloud 9. But I mean, that's not all we saw. There was so much.
That was absolutely.
Pick something else, Ben.
I mean, I'm just going to talk about the Gallade versus Gallade finals, where both of our trainers that made it all the way were doing so with a Trick Room focused team. We've seen them, kind of hearing about, but you see, I think a little bit more at the local level, where it's just so dangerous. If you don't come with a plan for teams like that, then you can really struggle. And I really loved the way that both of the trainers played them. I mean, I was even put out by maybe doubting Gallade's power and performance, and it almost struck me from the game for a few moments there, where I had to leave the team, and Shimon was able to come and take over for me. So it was one of those days, I think.
Our top cut was a real showcase.
Yeah,
there were so many of them. Clear Amulet as well, really useful item on that Pokemon. In fact, we had a Clear Amulet gouging fire earlier on in the day as well with
Dragon Dance. Yeah,
Clear Amulet seems to be the most valuable item. And something that's given me a lot of ideas. Late stage break. So we had the Gallade, we had quite a lot of Blood Moon Ursaluna as well, showcasing the raw power that thing can provide. Iron Moth, my goodness, you're in for an absolute treat, so you're in the right place. Sure. Shout out to Shimon as well, Simon Vanderbook, for everything this week, and not least our little nicknames.
Yes. We're still workshopping them. I think, Charlie, you've got yours well set. We're trying to on the stream yesterday, trying to find out a name or a pun rhyme that can go with my last name. If you have any ideas other than Cuckoo,
I'm pretty happy with
Please tell me. I mean, I don't know, maybe it fits. I'm not sure.
The reason why it fits is because you're possibly the person who's least likely I would describe as Cuckoo. That's why it works.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I think we're onto a winner. Give it a year.
I don't know.
Stratospheric.
Maybe I will be Cuckoo after a year.
True. Yeah.
Maybe.
It's not to drive anyone cuckoo. And of course, we're joined by our lovely plushy friends here.
Yes.
We got Stephen the Wobbuffet, Zeb the Snom. We got Dusty the Omanite. Got Renault in my pocket, and we've got our trainers ready on stage. So why don't we go over and meet them as well? We got Nick Theunis, Ross Leerman. Got our teams on screen as well, with a wonderful Beware welcoming us to the stream.
Absolutely. And looking down these teams, we're not starting out with the absolute crazy teams that we saw some of yesterday, but there is still room for maneuver on that front. And looking here, really liking what I'm seeing with Nick's team, that synergy between the Roaring Moon and the Golden Go. P2 or Porygon 2, we were talking about a lot yesterday, the more utilized Trick Room setup. People have been realizing at the end of Regulation Set F just how much it can bring to the table with Terra Blast, and this one being Terra Poison being the most common one, but Pross on the other side also rocking the Porygon 2, but with that regular Ursaluna, so no Blood Moons in sight for the early stages of this tournament.
I love Porygon 2. I was talking about it yesterday. I really flying that flag, and I'm so glad that we've got trainers here, and more yesterday, and hopefully more later on today. Also, repping that wonderful virtual rubber ducky. It's so bulky, especially with Evilite, but then you look to the more that both of them trainers are also running, and you know there's a knockoff over on Nick's side, and indeed on Frost's. Porygon has to be a little bit careful about that. You'll see Roaring Moon here as well. This is flying Batic, Dragon Dance as well, and Golden Go too. So you know it's not entirely. They're more balanced teams.
Definitely, yeah.
But still not entirely the standard. So I'm excited to see how these match up into each other. Rare that you see a Golden Go mirror as well.
Yeah, well, I was about to mention that actually, Charlie, because yeah, since I feel like regulation set A or B was the last time you really commonly saw Golden Goes mirroring up against each other, like every single match long, where it was one of the most prevalent threats, and it's always been one of the Pokemon where a new regulation set comes into the play. Maybe not for G, where restricted Pokemon are landing out, but hey, let's get back to that a little bit later as Porygon 2 is joining the field turn 1 for Pros, paired with the Incineroar and Landorus on Nick's side.
Incineroar and Landorus. Now, Landorus is really threatening down that Incineroar. Porygon gets that helpful boost to its special attack thanks to its download ability, and it is running with Ice Beam, so that Landorus is feeling threatened, but it would be going before the Porygon in order to take out to get around that, which in something from the back. Golden goes there, that's the only something like but Frost perhaps set up a trick. Certainly has a theme that's more angled towards that slower mode.
I think so. I mean, looking at the composition of Pros's team, you've definitely got that Ursaluna, which is a really nice Pokemon to be bringing in. But hey, here we go, starting things off. Incineroar knocking off that Eviolite and making sure that Porygon 2 is going to be taking that little bit more damage. Landorus protecting itself from the parting shot. You called it, Charlie. Here's the Trick Room coming out, and if the Incineroar is able to, on Pros's side, parting shot out into the Ursaluna, if it's actually going to be sitting in the back, then it's going to be able to activate the Flame Orb on the same turn that it enters the field and put on a lot of pressure. Ground type versus ground type in Landorus versus Ursaluna, but in Trick Room, definitely Ursaluna that's on the front end of that.
Right, and of course Landorus isn't any of the ground type moves as long as it remains unterrored in its flying state. Now, Porygon 2 has had the Eviolite knock. We talked about before the match. That's going to make it much softer here to remove from the field than it would have been otherwise. But let's get into this turn 2, and we're going to get all sparkly as it's time for Terastallization. And the target of choice will be the Landorus. It's doing its best pirate impression, skull and crossbones on its head, all aboard the good flying ship. Landorus Incarnate, threatening big sludge bombs onto the field. But knockoff coming out, that's going to remove the life orb, and that's really going to the damage output of this Genie. Ice Beam going to be no longer super effective against the Landorus. Fortunately, no freeze there as well. Flare Blitz into the freshly knocked off Porygon 2. Still takes it really well. A little bit of chip damage there thanks to the recall. Here comes a Terra boosted, but no longer Life Orb boosted. Sludge Bomb coming down into the Porygon as well, and it's going to be enough for the knockout. So no more Trick Rooms from Frost's side this game.
One of the things that I was thinking about in turn 1 was talking about how difficult it is for Porygon to get removed from the field. Landorus really doesn't like that because it's really generally quite vulnerable to an Ice Beam, and so like it's sitting on the field, it's threatening Ice Beam, you can't remove it quickly enough, so Landorus kind of wants to maybe switch out a little bit, but we're seeing how important that Eviolite is, knocking it off and then big damage into it. But it does pave the way for Ursaluna to come onto the field, and with all of that chip damage that Landorus has taken this turn, it's definitely under threat from being knocked out by either Incineroar or Ursaluna. So I think Nick really does have to worry about where the targeting of this Ursaluna is, and I think rightly so, getting that Incineroar out of there, because a headlong rush looks like it could be landing into that slot.
Could well be. There it is, and it's going to be neutral into the Amoonguss. That is about half health already onto that Pokemon. Does take a defense and special defense drop, and of course, Incineroar ready in the back to come in and intimidate as and when, but that's a Flare Blitz down there. Enough for the knockout, and that is the Terra option for Nick gone as well. Porygon 2 for Frost having gone down. Could have gone for a recover if it still had that Eviolite option item held, able to stick around in the game for much longer, but of course now it's down, leaving the way for a free switch in for Ursaluna. And now Ursaluna is burned by its Flame Orb. Amoonguss took that much damage even before the Flame Orb activation. The Guts ability, and that is heightening the attack of the Ursaluna. thanks to Burn.
But now Incineroar coming back in and intimidating the Ursaluna. It's kind of back to where it was before the burn took effect and the Guts boost was activated, kind of cancelling each other out almost in this situation. But if Ursaluna switches out to reset that Intimidate, comes back in a little bit later, it will be at full power. As you said, Charlie, doesn't need to be at full power to be able to knock out this Amoonguss. And even though Amoonguss is likely to be the faster in the Trick Room condition that we're in right now, because of that burn, it protects it from the sleep, and that's a really big deal. It means that Ursaluna can target wherever it wants to without worrying about being put to sleep. But because this Ursaluna is carrying Swords Dance, not Earthquake, the Amoonguss can redirect any of its attacks.
It can do. Looks like it might only be able to do that just the once if staying in this turn. And it's going to be Pollen Puff. Good fall into the Ogerpon. So that is super effective there. Facade now boosted by the Flame Orb as well. That's a move.
Not enough.
Does even more damage when you have a status conditions. But really well with Ursaluna's Guts ability. Incineroar getting that Citrus Berry activation, just hanging on there, as you said, Ben, and a little knockoff coming out into Ogerpon as well. So currently, Pross really making the most of the Trick Room that they've got set up. And as you said, Ursaluna not worried about this.
But a really nice switch in there for Pross, but Nick calling it so well. I mean, it's so tempting in that situation. The Incineroar on Pross's side is a Figgy Berry rather than safety goggles, and so would be susceptible to a Spore. Nick, seeing through what Pross was going for, was like, hey, well, I need to switch in my Grass-type Pokemon to take a Spore, so in the later stages of the game, I'm not having a Pokemon asleep and can't do anything. But Nick's like, nope, I'm just going to Pollen Puff it and instead do quite a lot of damage. And that Ogerpon is really looking like it's struggling right now.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's certainly not threatening any damage onto the Amoonguss, or indeed this Roaring Moon, being a part Dragon type, will be resisting Water and Grass type move. And the booster energy is going to get Roaring Moon's attack nice and threatening to approaches. Ogerpon getting the spiky shield up, Pollen Puff attempting to target that down as well, giving this Ursaluna completely free reign. But the question is, are the Pokemon on Nick's side going to be able to bear it? That's the Facade into Amoonguss, and down it goes. A little bit of Rocky Helmet chip, and paired with the Burn chip that's coming out thanks to Ursaluna, Flame Orb, all of that is going to matter more and more. And just look, that Ursaluna nearly down at 50% already.
A really good set of targeting there for Pross, making sure that you're whittling away the supportive options, the glue of Nick's team, and trying to get into a situation where Nick isn't able to cycle Intimidates, isn't able to redirect any attacks, and that Ursaluna can do what it wants. But having said that, the Intimidate coming down onto these two physical attackers is pretty damning for Pross in this situation, where Incineroar's come in, it's got the Fake Out ready. That Roaring Moon can go for Dragon Dance, get itself set up, and there's not a lot that Pross can do to stop it right now.
Can't even go for another Trick Room before Oregon 2 was held so early on, but nice for Pross to get his own Intimidate cycling going. Time to frighten Nick's Pokemon. Acrobatics connecting down onto Ogerpon. Never fear, Roaring Moon is here, providing that super effective flying type damage onto Ogerpon Wellspring. So now 2 Pokemon apiece, as the Ursaluna remains in the back for Pross as well. Flare Blitz, good for a little bit of chip into the Incineroar. These two wrestlers facing off against each other in the ring.
Again, now Pross is in the situation where you can't Intimidate cycle anymore. 2 Pokemon getting knocked out. These Incineroars are locked on the field. That does mean that they can use their parting shots to just drop the attack and special attack of those Pokemon opposite them, and I think that's probably something that they're thinking about, especially with the 2 Pokemon that are next to the Incineroar being such powerhouses. One benefit for Pross at this stage is that the Roaring Moon didn't actually get its Dragon Dance up, instead opting to end up in this sort of 2v2 situation, but with Pross having Fake Out onto the board, the Flame Orb getting knocked off there, but it's already done its job. I think Pross is in a pretty nice situation.
Yeah, you can knock up all you like, buddy, but that burn is still active. At least the knockoff did damage because the Ursaluna was holding an eye. That's the Incineroar down. Ursaluna looking so low now as that burn keeps whittling away. Heading into this next turn, we've got Pross with a very healthy Incineroar and a very unhealthy Roaring Moon completely full on Nick's side. But decisions are plenty right now. You can easily pick up the knockout onto the Ursaluna and chip away at the Incineroar, but in order to have the staying power, it might come down to the wire.
It could be close, but I think it's all a matter of targeting here and all a matter of the fact that the Ursaluna is so low with the burn.
Yeah,
I think the fact that Pross targeted into the Incineroar there, predicting the Protect that's just come out on the Roaring Moon last turn, I think was the really critical factor in this end game. If Roaring Moon had taken as much damage as it would have done from the Ursaluna on the turn where it was able to go for an attack, then this could definitely be Pross's game. But because Nick didn't protect the Roaring Moon and instead got some damage on the board, got that knockoff going, I think he paved the way for just being able to target down the Ursaluna. If it protects this turn,
oh, it gets
as
the
it
double
does,
protect. It gets the double, having protected on the previous turn, so it's a really good call from Nick. But the acrobatics is fail into that slot now. You're very vulnerable to this instant draw. Now, last turn it went for a parting shot. This turn, just a flare blitz. Is there going to be a burn here? Nick crossing his fingers that doesn't happen. A little bit of recoil damage onto the Incineroar, and we're okay. Ursaluna is going to hang on just by a
It's going to hang on,
after
yeah.
that burn. So now you can safe protect on the Roaring Moon. Ursaluna goes down. Incineroar did not parting shot. So Roaring Moon looking like Synergy. Oh, it's exciting.
This is it. This is the value of going for that knockoff in the previous turns.
Yeah.
This is why it mattered, because you can just go for a safe protect. If the Ursaluna hadn't protected before, it would have just taken an acrobatics, been knocked out that turn. Sure. Now we're seeing how much damage the Incineroars are going to be doing facing off against each other, and we're seeing the value of Pross knocking out the Incineroar on Nick's side. It wasn't able to parting shot, means that Flare Blitz is at its maximum power. Maybe 2 or 3 more of those would be able to do it. And given that the attack has been dropped already on the Roaring Moon, it'll really come down to how much value is Dragon Dance, how many times you need to acrobatics to be able to knock out this Incineroar, and does the recoil from Flare Blitz play a part in how this unfolds?
And the more Flare Blitzes you dish out, the more opportunities there are for burns as
Right,
well.
absolutely.
Dragon Dance being set up. This Roaring Moon was at -1 attack. It's now at neutral. Speed as well, though it's always going to be the faster thing on the field. Oh goodness, here we go. Here comes another Flare Blitz.
That's more than half. That's more than
Oh,
half.
and
Here it
burn.
is.
It gets the burn. Nick's got it in his hands there. So frustrating to see that, but that recall is adding up after an amount of damage. But, you know, you're now at neutral attack with a burned Roaring Moon. The Incineroar, look at that health part. It's looking quite good. It's not like the Roaring Moon. It's super effective damage into the Incineroar, and so Nick is at this game 1. Very well played by both trainers.
Unlike stat drops where, you know, you've been intimidated and then you get a critical hit, you go through those drops, so to speak. So you're doing back to neutral damage and then you're doing the extra multiplier from the critical hit. Unlike that, burn does take the multiplier into account where it's half the damage that you do, but that includes critical hits. That's why burning a Pokemon like Urshifu is so effective, because Surging Strikes and Wicked Blow also get reduced in power. And so, yeah, the burn definitely sealed things up. There wasn't even a chance for a nice cheeky little critical hit to come back and you know, put Nick back into the driver's seat. But of course, you know, we've got to say it. The more times you go for the Flare Blitz, the more likely it is. You said it before, Charlie. The more likely it is to get that burn.
Yeah, it seemed like in that end game, Roaring Moon was slightly too much of it. It go for a couple of Dragon Dance and acrobatics in the same turn. Something that you're not able to. Now, even though Pross lost the trip, so had that burn not happened, Dragon Dance going off, you're at neutral attack. It was still taking a lot of damage from the Flare Blitz.
A couple of acrobatics probably would have been enough to take it out. But again, we're talking about the Trick Room and how these 2 players that have Trick Room opportunity are sort of matching up into each other, and going for the Trick Room really did benefit Pross a lot more because of that offensive pressure in the Ursaluna. Its combination of Facade and Headlong Rush is really quite difficult for Nick to be able to deal with effectively. It's hard for either trainer to stop the Trick Room. And of course, the fact that the Ursaluna gets burnt, stopping the main issue for most Trick Room teams, or the thing that they most have to deal with, is Amoonguss just putting a Pokemon to sleep and
Yeah.
ruining the entire game plan. So yeah, I think if Pros is leaning into that a little bit more, then Nick maybe has to go back to the drawing board and think like, okay, how can I punish that Trick Room a little bit more? How can I put something that's a little bit more difficult for Pros to be able to deal with in front of it? And I'm looking at that Golden Go.
Oh, yeah, okay, Golden Go.
Get the nasty
Also-
plot going.
Yeah, get
Protect
them going.
it.
Also, knockoff, knockoff could be a big threat to such a Golden Go. But heading into this game, there is Porygon 2 and Incineroar on the field, facing off against this Porygon on the side. Now, it's Intimidate going on first. That could well be an indication as to in fact, it definitely is, because it was Porygon 2 that activated next, getting an attack boost rather than a attack boost. That's the slower. Here comes Rory Moon. All these Pokemon enjoying it. Nice overview of the speed tiering that we are dealing with. I feel like going into a match after two, some Pokemon that are larger. Got to be pivoting around in order to get your Pokemon possible. No pesky Trick Room going up this time.
Nor a pesky Dragon Dance coming out from this Roaring Moon, a fake out a piece. And this is kind of the gentleman's rule of fake out. Just fake out the other thing. Let's just have a nice dead turn here, and then we can start playing Pokemon, start playing this match. But it does make a big difference about how the next turn plays out. Nick, of course, has 2 opportunities to knock off the Porygon 2. We saw how valuable that was. Here it is, the first one coming out from the Roaring Moon, boosting speed rather than boosting attack because of the Intimidate going off before the Photosynthesis gets activates, and that's also reducing the damage output of Nick's Roaring Moon there. You can see how little damage it did from the knockoff into the Porygon, and it's going to be doing even less with Parting Shot coming out from Incineroar. Pros getting to change things up a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised. Yep, here it is. The bear's on the field. It's going to get its Flame Orb activated this turn. Incineroar is already on the field, so no Intimidate can be switched in. That's a scary bear.
Yeah, things are about to get grisly as we head into our first turn of Trick Room. Porygon 2, that lovely virtual Pokemon in the virtual environment. Ursaluna, really, really threatening right now. Deadman, unintimidated, burn already activated before the end of the turn when the Flame Orb does come into effect. And now, looking in the back for Nick, like it's difficult to find an appropriate switch in, an appropriate answer for this ground and normal. You're really dealing with most threats in the
Amoonguss coming in, but unlike last time, if it has to take a Facade for its troubles, then it's probably going to get knocked out in one. That's one of the things that burnt Ursaluna is really capable of doing. Facade into that slot, not enough to pick up the KO, but it could be a follow-up here. No, just a recover from the Porygon 2, making sure that it's not going to be going down quite as quickly as it did before, probably putting itself in a spot where it's thinking, hey, maybe I can get another Trick Room up a little bit later on, because you look at the end game of game 1, where the Ursaluna was still quite effective. It was protecting itself and just drawing in attacks from the Roaring Moon, but it would have really loved to have another Trick Room going up. That would have made things so much easier for Pros.
Yeah, it just goes to show how even once you've won game 1, there are still adaptations, you can make little improvements you can in order to secure game 2 as well. And going for a recover on the Porygon 2 rather than letting it go down could be huge for Pros here. Now here comes the first Intimidate. I feel that if Pros is going to allow it, we're going to be seeing a lot of cycling in. Ursaluna has had its damage output a little bit there, but it's still just at -1. It's still doing a lot of damage onto the now, Facade targeting down Landorus. See how much damage this does. It's very, very low. Could have been a one-hit knockout without the Intimidate. There comes the Ice Beam onto the Incineroar. No freeze there, but a Flare Blitz would have melted the ice anyway. Landorus really coming into feeling very unwelcome as it switched in just there, already on such low health.
I think mostly they feel quite unwelcome with coming in on those sort of targets, and we've just got to switch to a little bit of an over-the-shoulder camera here to see our players in action. There we go. This is exactly what this game is all about. The Ursaluna and the Incineroar
Exactly.
staring each other down.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary bear, but it's just as scary a cat with that Intimidate ability. At least it's not going to be acting this turn. Terra Blast, though, targeting into the Incineroar. Nick, of course, protecting the Landorus, predicting an Ice Beam or anything else, really, that could have taken out that slot. But in fact, ended up being a completely free turn for Pross to deal damage. Porygon 2, we can't understate the damage output that Pokemon can have as well. But Landorus now having burnt that Protect when it could have provided some useful offense onto the field. Not the greatest of positions.
This is the trouble when you're against Ursaluna, and in fact, Porygon 2, this one's not boosted by download in its special attack, instead getting the attack boost because of Roaring Moon's more capable physical defense. But yeah, it's a really tough thing. You've got to find, Nick has got to find all of those places where Protect is the most valuable, but also understand where Pross is wanting to target, and instead going for damage where he's able to, kind of weaving it back in as the Porygon 2, I believe. Oh no, the Incineroar is going to be switching out here to the Amoonguss, but the Amoonguss is getting knocked out in one. It's going to be taken out on the switch in as quickly as it came in.
Yeah, it's just this Ursaluna is running rampant, and the damage output is something that Nick has failed to deal with. Of course, that Landorus was on such low health already going down. We realise you can't see this, trainers. Just have the radio version of the battle the Bird and I are providing. You can see over the shoulder of Pross here on the Porygon 2 and Ursaluna are looking threatening right now. What comes the Roaring Moon once more joining the field. His health bar is pretty good, and that's Incineroar as well. So now this Ursaluna at -2 of its attack by the Flame Orb and that ability. Health bar is dwindling right now, but it could still have more than enough in order to threats on the other side. Porygon 2.
I think so, and you know, looking at the Ursaluna now, the Ursaluna is sitting at pretty low health. That's because it's had to target into a Rocky Helmet Amoonguss 2 times on the switch in. Now, it has finally knocked out that Amoonguss, but there's no way for it to recover health, and of course, the burn is dwindling its health further. But as you say, angling for another Trick Room, I'd be very surprised to see Pross go for any other kind of strategy, especially when he's likely to have an Incineroar in the back of his own to be able to switch in and be able to reset those conditions. But Incineroar switching in the other slot instead.
Yeah, of course, the Porygon 2 has been softened up with its Delight having been removed. So, more vulnerable setting up a Trick Room, but still possibly could have done that here. Mitigating the damage output from Nick's side, as well as having the Predator field, and Nick doing all that they can in order to flip the tables on that. Dragon Dance onto the Roaring Moon. Back up to neutral facade. Not enough for the knockout. You can see how much damage it's doing, even with 2 Intimidates now coming out from the Roaring Moon. Such low health. I feel like most of Nick's Pokemon around this mark at some point in the battle, thanks to the Ursaluna.
I've got to say, this is one of the things that I really like about playing Ursaluna specifically, is that the damage output that it does is so big.
Right, absolutely. With the Incineroar for as long as it possibly can. Gentleman's Rule has sort of been broken there as fake off from the Incineroar going into own Incineroar, which does activate that Citrus Berry. A really good use of Fake Out there, actually, because now, even if Incineroar were to hang on, which it does, there's no Citrus Berry activation there.
Not at all, and yeah, there's a lot of damage coming out from both of the Pokemon that Nick has on side of his field. They're all sort of teetering on the edge, hanging on to kind of remain in this battle. Nick does need to win this game to take things to a game 3, but it's such an uphill battle. You've still got the Porygon 2, you've still got another Pokemon in the back that is yet to be revealed for Pross. So these Pokemon have got to do a lot of work, but if there's Pokemon that can do it, I think a boosted Roaring Moon is certainly something of potential because it's got so much more damage output, especially with that terastallization.
Better late than never. Time for Roaring Moon to take flight. It's not enough for the knockout onto the Incineroar. Both Pokemon on Nick's side. So low, the Ursaluna hangs on in the face of the knockoff. You can see Nick's reaction there. Cannot believe his eyes. Flare Blitz, of course, enough to pick up the knockout onto the Roaring Moon. My goodness, this Ursaluna has certainly been the most valuable bear in the battle. Just going to show that for Pross, all he needs is the bear necessities.
I'm just going to let that one sink in, Charlie.
As we watch Ursaluna deliver the finishing blow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well done to Pross. He played that certainly the second game so cleanly, just able to get the Trick Room set up, just make sure that Ursaluna was in a perfect position, utilize the passing shot mechanics where the Ursaluna comes in at the end of the turn. That's when Flame Orb activates. Get it set up so you've got 4 turns to be launching those big attacks. And hey, yeah, you can intimidate it as many times as you want. Yeah, maybe the Pokemon that you're targeting down into aren't going to get knocked out, but if they're close enough to getting knocked out, well, any of the remaining of your Pokemon can do the last vestiges of damage that they need to be able to take those knockouts and put you ahead in the game, especially when you're under that Trick Room condition, especially when you're likely to be going first.
Right, and I love how Beware on the stage there was looking so proud of its Ursine buddy, Ursaluna. And yeah, Ursaluna is Pokemon everyone was talking about right back even before Regulation Set D started. So we're talking approaching a year ago now. And proving why it's still so good in the format. Of course, now, unlike them, we have access to Porygon 2 in the game. And they pair up together so well with Porygon 2, hopefully able to do that massive special attack if the downloadability works that way, depending on what you bring into it. Covering for weaknesses with Ice Beam, for example, and just a normal Terra Blast, even pre-Terra, is going to do a lot of damage. Poison, Terra Blast is dealing with those Grass-type Pokemon like Ogerpon Wellspring that can threaten us. So yeah, real masterclass there from Pross as to how to play that Pokemon. And I want to call out as well, yes, so Nick was cycling in those Intimidates, and to be fair to him, the Pokemon, thanks to the Intimidates, were still surviving on that sliver. So doing everything Nick possibly could to try and clinch out those games. But yeah, unfortunately, too little too.
I think that's a really good thing to call out. It's the training that Nick put into his Pokemon, and that's served him well in the game. I mean, if those Pokemon got knocked out straight away, then it would be a very much shorter game than it was. But Nick doing everything that he needed to do, and also I want to call out the game 1, especially at the start, where Nick was able to understand that Porygon it needs to go if Nick's to have a foothold in the game, and being able to target it down, remove the Eviolite, even in Trick Room to be able to dispatch of it. It really changed the sort of flow of the game, stopped the Ursaluna from coming in straight away and activating its Flame Orb, and therefore doing a little bit less damage for a turn. And of course, at the end of Trick Room, then there was no opportunity for Pross to get the Trick Room started again. So the overall game plan, the execution of it, the understanding of what the problems were that Nick had to deal with was really impressive. I mean, with the Flare Blitz burn, it didn't quite go in his favor in that particular game, but hey, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we only need to think back to our Premier Challenge playing yesterday. Call out many a missed opportunity, many pieces of luck, let's say, that didn't go our way. Forgot to Terra a Pokemon. I literally thought I had. Didn't play out. Terra animation wasn't playing. I thought, why did? And then I lost. I could have won. Could have won that. It happens. It happens.
I mean, I had a pretty good Swiss. Found a way to make Kingdra work, but unfortunately, Kingdra let me down at the final hurdle in the top 4. Top 4 of the Premier Challenge. No, to be fair, Kingdra did actually win me some of my rounds. So yeah, we're playing against Benjamin, who was the player we saw yesterday on the stream with the Terra Rock Venusaur. He was playing a completely different team with a Choice Specs Blizzard Iron Bundle in the snow and a Wheezing, Galarian Wheezing, in fact. No. Regular Wheezing, Cantonian Wheezing, that it was running. And I found out some interactions that I didn't even know about, where with a little bit of an update that we've had. Neutralizing gas turns off the speed boost from photosynthesis even after a booster energy is activated, which I didn't know. He absolutely got me with that. But yeah, Kingdra was actually one of the big pieces that was able to turn things around for me in games 2 and 3.
That's fantastic. Good on you, Kingdra. Good job, Renata. Renata's actually
Well
a
done.
girl. So, well, when I said, I don't talk about one boy like that, I mean generally as Kingdra, the species. But yes, I think I'd love to be able to say the same about Frostmoth. But unfortunately, it didn't. It was never really able to get going. I do think it's got a lot of untapped potential.
I do too.
Got our
Yeah.
Snom here as well. Oh, and look what's appeared.
Oh,
What's appeared?
well.
Got a nice little
Would you look at
Kanto
that?
starter, including Pikachu. What even are they? Are they like highlighters, perhaps? Yeah. Love that. Love that
Yeah.
little addition to
Now-
our backdrop.
I've got a question for you, Charlie.
Oh, you had many of these yesterday. as well.
I
Let's
did
see
have
how
many
this
of these
goes.
yesterday, and since you've been asking everybody else, but I don't think I've ever seen you reveal which of the first partner Pokemon that you would have picked out of the 3.
Well then, I will show you through the medium of picking up a highlighter rather than dance. My chosen Kanto starter is.
Ah,
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, it's got to be Squirtle. Pokemon Blue was my first one, and when I saw all the starters there in Press Oak's lab, I just felt that instant connection. You know, sometimes you just feel that with a Pokemon. Squirtle is my boy, and generally, growing up, I tended to choose the water first partner Pokemon.
I did too.
I
Yeah,
think in recent years, I've pivoted more towards the grass actually, and rarely the fire. But I would make an exception for Fennekin.
Yeah, I do. I mean, Coco. Absolutely. Yeah, for me, we were talking about this before we started on camera today. It's I'm not actually sure. I cannot remember for the life of me which one was my first partner Pokemon. Now, I think it's either going to be Squirtle or Bulbasaur, but I can't remember what young Ben actually picked. These days, I would go towards Squirtle as well.
It's hard for you to remember what young Ben picked. That was approximately 309,000 years.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said 1,000 rather than million.
Yeah.
It could have been million.
I think
Could have been.
that probably would have been too much. I think you've got to pick the right
Yeah,
level.
right level.
Otherwise, it's just too outlandish. But more specific, yeah, it's big enough without being overly.
Absolutely. But
345,000.
after 345,000 years, I need a little bit of a break here. So stay tuned. Make like Omanite.
Your fossil buddy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember when he was a lad. So yeah, we're going to take a very short break, but stay tuned because we're going to be getting right back to the action at the Lanaken mid-season showdown. Still haven't said regional. I'm gonna hold on to that. But we'll be very, very quickly back with round 2 coming up. So stay tuned.